Let's do it.
We live with it. We live and we here and we broadcasting from Kenya all the way to Dimona. That's how we doing it.
Yes, sir.
Ashriel, you back again, my brother. Let's keep doing this work together.
Yes, sir.
Let's keep giving our people information that they need, to liberate their minds, and let people know what's going on. So we here again, and today the title, what we're going to talk about, what's really going on in Israel, and we got Ashriel in here, and he's in Dimona. So I need you to elaborate to the people who you is, man. Give them a little brief on who you is, my brother. Tell the people who you is.
Well, first of all, I'm your brother.
Straight up.
We'll start with that over here in the land. But I'm also a member of the African Hebrew Israelite community here in Israel. And I serve as the ambassador of the African Diaspora Collective to Israel, to the Middle East. And so part of my job is to make sure that we continue to bring, on the ground facts about what's taking place here in the land, and to give a perspective that's like none other, that's given a proper representation of what our brothers and sisters are experiencing here in Israel. But I also like to give all praises, first of all, to God Almighty, because without him and his favor over us, we wouldn't be where we are. We wouldn't be who we are. And so I'd like to give honor and thanks, and also to those leaders and teachers in my generation who have shaped me into form. And a lot of what I speak is things that are things that I've gotten from them. And so I have to give them, all honor and praises. His Excellency Ben Ami, my spiritual leader, and Prince Ashriel, the great ambassador of the community, and Prince Shaliak, the Prince Chancellor, and one of the greatest historians of the Black world, my father, Sarbakuria, my mother, Zabda. We have to give credence to those who really laid out the way for us to be where we are today. We can never forget whose shoulders we're standing on. And so it's always important for us to be able to start out the conversation by letting the people know who we are and what we represent. And then once we get into the crux of the conversation, they can be able to then, notice that this information is something that they never heard before.
Nah, definitely, my brother, definitely. It's a blessing to have you on again. So let's get into it, bro. Let's get into it. So what's really going on in Israel? Let me ask you this question. How is the war affecting the African Hebrew Israelites that's in Israel, that's out there? How is it affecting the brothers and sisters out there, man? Give people real-time information.
Like in every war, anybody who is within, that country that is at war, the main effect is always first and foremost economically. In a war like this, where it costs about 1 billion shekels a day to fight, those things are going to come back at us. And now they're starting to talk about increasing the taxes, and inflation is going to get worse. And so these things, have a direct effect on anybody who resides in Israel, because whether you're a Hebrew Israelite or not, you still have to go to the grocery store and buy, fundamental goods. You still have to pump gas in your car. So, the gas prices have went up. But not only that, we have soldiers who are serving in the IDF, because as permanent residents in Israel and as citizens, it's an obligation for everybody who's here to serve in IDF. So whether you're a Hebrew Israelite or an Arab Druze or an Arab Israeli or a Bedouin or an Ethiopian or Moroccan or German or Christian even, so long as you have Israeli citizenship, you're obligated to reside, to serve in the military. So we have people who are serving in the military, and just by virtue of having on the IDF uniform, you automatically become a target. But you're not a target only having on the uniform. When those rockets are being launched from Gaza, they're hidden, not that far away from Dimona. So you have some rockets that have been launched about 15 minutes out of Dimona. You have rockets that have been launched in the next city up from Dimona, which is called Beersheba, where majority of our people spend a lot of time shopping and other things, and so it's become a security threat even for us as well. So we're pretty much affected by it like anybody else in the country. We haven't really had nobody from the community, by the grace of God, that have been badly wounded or even killed. But all of us know somebody who has been killed during this war, unfortunately. And so, just by virtue, of us residing here in Israel being such a small place, everybody almost knows everybody, or you in a few circles that you have direct connection to other people. And so we're affected just as much as everybody else are affected from this war, and we would like and hope for it to end.
Yeah, that is unfortunate what's going on out here. That is unfortunate what's going on out here, because it's affecting the world, and then to see what's going on in Israel, and how it's affecting the family out there, and people having to relocate. Some people had to relocate, in certain situations. So, man, it's crazy, bro. Let me ask you this though.
I didn't even mention that. I was
go
thinking about the ones who are right there in Dimona. I was speaking about the ones who are right there in Dimona, but there are others who were right there on the border with Gaza, who had to evacuate their homes and to find refuge in other places internally in Israel because of the barrage of rockets that have been launched right over their heads. Some people's homes even were hit directly by rockets in Ashkelon. And so, an elderly sister had to move out of her home because her home was hit by a rocket directly. And so it's real. These rockets don't, they don't have a name on them. They don't have a color on them. They don't have a community on them. They don't have a belief system on them. When they're launched, anybody who's just within the vicinity of Israel becomes an immediate target. And we have to understand that, because people who don't reside in Israel would not ever understand, the kind of reality that somebody would have to live under, having rockets shot to the middle of civil territory. We understand when you see rockets or bombs being launched, or being dropped in Gaza or in other places, we see the type of damage that causes. But there's also physical damage, psychological damage, property damage that is people who are residing in Israel are being affected by. And if we didn't have the counterceptors, then we would probably be having, way more damage than what we have right now. Because imagine, Palal, 3,000, 4,000 rockets being launched a day. And about 70 to 80% of those rockets are being countercepted, but then are intercepted. But then another 10% of them are, blown up in territory which don't really inhabit citizens like that. But then you have another 10, 15% of them that are falling in civil territory. That's a lot of rockets, and that has major damage. But anybody who doesn't live in Israel would never be able to understand that reality. And I believe also that if you live in or under that type of reality, most likely you wouldn't expect your government to allow that to continue to happen just that way.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, man. It's like a little small delay, So, you know what I'm saying, between us, it's just a tad bit. But that is interesting, bro. That is interesting. You know, those brothers and sisters that's over there in Ashkelon, and some of them had to relocate. And like you said, people, these missiles, these bombs, they don't have no name on it. They landing where they gonna land. You know, wherever they being shot at, they gonna land. So let me ask you this question though, bro. How is the war affecting the Palestinians that's out there in Israel? How is it affecting them that's out there? Black
I would
Palestinians per
divide it
se
into
too.
two.
Yeah. You got it. You got
Yeah.
it.
You know, most people don't even know. Most people don't even know that there are Afro-Palestinian peoples, Black people. Because let me first frame this for you so you can be able to understand. The term Palestinian is a term that was given to the region by the Romans after the overthrow of the Israelite government in Israel. And they coined the term Syria Palestina, which then became just an offshoot of their empire, right? And so Syria Palestina was the name of the region that was given to the region by the Romans. And this is all the way back in 70 AD, right? And even prior to that. Now, that name held on throughout the generations with everybody who actually then captured Israel and overthrew the previous governments. So you had the Romans, and then after the Romans, you had they were overturned by the Arab conquerors, right, who were called the Muhammadans, and that was in the 7th century, in the 8th century. Then after that, you had them being overthrown by the Crusaders. Then after the Crusaders, you had the Mamluks. Then after the Mamluks, you had the Ottomans. Then after the Ottomans, they lost World War I, and then they were overturned by the British. And then the British then gained the mandate over Israel, and that was in 1920. And in 1948, the state of Israel was established after they had given that right to the Jewish people to establish a state, and they also gave the right to the Arab peoples who resided here to also establish for themselves a state. And so the name Palestine is just a name that was given to the region politically by the Romans, but it was never an actual established state of Palestine. So, you know, contrary to the belief, it was never, you know, there was never an entity that was established that was called the land or the country or the state of Palestine with, you know, all the things that go with statehood, with an army, with leadership, with borders, with all those things. That they never existed. They never, from the 8th century all the way up until the establishment of the state of Israel. The establishment of the state of Israel was the only establishment of a sovereign state that wasn't under conquering power. And people don't really realize that. And so a significant amount of the people who were here, Arabs and Jews alike, they were all called Palestinians under the name Palestine because they resided on the land of Palestine. And so you have Afro-Palestinian people who, you know, trace their roots all the way back, who've been here throughout the generations. Black people just like you and I, some of them migrated from places like Sudan. Some were actually residing here throughout the generations. They could be able to count 15, 16, 17 generations back. Some people were actually brought here as slaves by the different powers who were controlling this region, and so they still reside here, and they reside here. I got a call coming in. They still live here, and some also live in Gaza. And how are they being affected? Well, unfortunately, in war, you have casualties. And on both ends, you had actually Arab Palestinians or Afro Palestinians who were actually killed, both in Israel by Hamas and in Gaza by the airstrikes of the Air Force. So on both ends, and what I always say to everybody is that we don't get the luxury to focus in on just one or two parameters and disregard all the other ones, because our people are suffering on all ends. And so our desire is to bring it to an end altogether, to finish this war altogether, because our people are being affected on both sides. And when you choose a side, I know most people choose sides based on a narrative, but they don't really go deep into understand what's actually taking place. They just, based on what they may see on TikTok or based on what they may see on TV, they frame their understanding of what's taking place, but they don't have a really deep understanding of it. So if you don't research and you don't look at what's been taking place in Israel throughout the generations, not only from 1948 and going forward, then you would not understand what's going on in Israel, because Israel is not a monolith. There's more than 102 nationalities who reside in Israel. All of the world religions are here in Israel. Even in within the Palestinian people, they're not a monolith. You have the Palestinian Authority, which is the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Then you have the Hamas, which is a totally different organization, which is a radical Islamist organization that is a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Then you have Afro-Palestinians who are experiencing racism and discrimination under the lighter Palestinian people in Gaza and in the West Bank. And so, when you say Palestinians or when you say Israelis, it's not just one group of people that you're referring to. This thing is way more nuanced than what people actually think it is. And I try and give a balanced perspective on all angles, because at the end of the day, we live here. And so whatever takes place here, we're being affected by it as much as anybody else. And so we have to be very knowledgeable about what's taking place here, and we maintain our relationships with all of the peoples in the land. But we also understand that if there's a power that is calling for the absolute obliteration and destruction of the state of Israel and all of its residents, then we don't get to, be isolated. No. They see us as just as much as part of the problem as anybody else who resides in Israel, just by virtue of us being in Israel. And so we're targets just like anybody else, unfortunately. And that's what I hope my brothers and sisters understand.
Yeah, that's some powerful information you mentioned. And let me ask you this question, since we dealing with the different demographics that's there in Israel. How is the war affecting the Israelis out there?
Well, I mean, they have more than 300,000 people in reserve duty who were called up to fight. And, these people, I mean, they get a small stipend for fighting, but all of these people had to vacate jobs. And so those jobs are not being, carried out by other people. And so now you have, a vacancy of jobs. And because you had a vacancy of jobs, now they have an issue with the economy. And so that's going to affect the economy in Israel going forward. Two, the people in Israel are really, really traumatized by what took place on October 7th and going forward, because everybody knows somebody who were affected that day, who was killed. You still with me?
Yeah, you can hear me? I'm still with you. You can hear me?
Yeah. Now, everybody knows somebody who was killed that day. 1,200 people being killed in a matter of 8 to 9 hours is serious. 2,000 to 3,000 Hamas soldiers coming into Israel and killing anybody who was in their sight. It doesn't matter if you are, a foreigner, a foreign worker, an asylum seeker, Black, European, Israeli. It didn't make any difference. Everybody were targets of, this devastating horror that took place on October 7th. And so everybody's going down and looking at the areas that were affected, the people who were killed in their homes, and everybody really traumatized, because they're saying that if something like that happened, and Israel's supposed to have one of the best militaries in the world and one of the best intelligence agencies in the world, and have the ability to know what's taking place at all times in Gaza, and they manage to miss something like that, then it's not safe. And the next time it can happen, in a different area in Israel, and it would have an even stronger effect. So people are really still trying to pick up the broken pieces from what took place there. When you hear the stories of the horrors, then everybody is just heartbroken. I mean, men and women getting raped, children and babies beheaded, mutilation of bodies. I mean, destruction on all angles. People being shot down like animals at a party. And everybody have access to the pictures and to the videos. And so it's just devastating. I mean, everybody's really trying to understand, how did we get to a point where we have to experience such thing like that? I can understand, Palestinian people being oppressed and experiencing what they've been experiencing for years. And so, I mean, there's a natural way to respond to oppression, but it's not to target innocent civilian human beings. And because of that, everybody is really in an uproar. And like I said, it's going to take some time for people to actually heal from what took place. So Israel is going to take some time. They're going to need some time to heal from what took place on October 7th and going forward. The Palestinian people are going to have to heal from the devastating destruction in Gaza, and the deaths of so many beings. There's going to be a major sacrifice that's going to have to take place on both ends, because this has really affected people to the core, more than what anybody who lives in any place else outside of Israel could even imagine. You couldn't even imagine what takes place here just daily by looking at something for 15, 20 minutes on the news. That wouldn't give you a proper representation of the experiences that people are having here in Israel. And it's like, a nation in mourning. Since October 7th, Israel has been in mourning. And so I would say all of those together is the way that this has been affecting the Israeli people and the people in Gaza.
Yeah, that's crazy though, bro. That's crazy. Now I just want to make this clear: the brothers and sisters that's in Dimona, they did not have to relocate. You have brothers and sisters in Ashkelon that had to relocate. I just wanted to make that clear for the viewers, what I'm saying, and everything. But this is the last question, bro. Let me ask you this. Now, a lot of people hearing this name Hamas. Can you elaborate? Can you give the viewers the understanding? Explain to the people, what is Hamas? And you touched on it a little bit. Yeah, you touched on it a little bit, but can you go into full detail?
Yeah, Hamas is a radical Islamist jihadist group who was established in 1987. It was established in 1987 as a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is an internationally known radical Islamist group that even states in the Arab world and people in the Arab world denounce. And so Hamas is just an offshoot of them just in this specific region. Now, according to the Hamas charter, in Article 7, they say that their job is, first of all, to free Palestine from the Zionists, which means to obliterate Israel and everybody who resides here in actuality, because they're not really focusing on a specific people, but they're focusing, on Israel, the region, and everybody who is residing in Israel, in the state. This organization came into, they're actually a religious group, right? Not contrary to what the PLO is. The PLO is not a religious group, but they're more secular. But the Hamas is a religious group, and they believe that the entire world should come under the domination of Islam, radical Islam. And they believe that the world has been taken off course, and the only way to bring it back is to bring everybody under Islam worldwide. And the way to do that, in their belief, is by al-harb, which means the sword, which means jihad, which means violence. And so this is what they've been dedicated to since the establishment in 1987. Now, when they were established in 1987, they actually were established as a group that would be contrary or in direct opposition to the PLO, because they didn't believe that the PLO were doing their job, and they saw the PLO as an organization that was that was failing the people, an organization that was absolutely from the core problematic, an organization that was destructive, an organization who was actually looking to create some type of political agreement with Israel. And in their opinion, they don't believe that negotiations with Israel about nothing should be. They say that the only way to go about doing anything with Israel is through jihad. And so they were, in 2006, they were actually voted in as a majority party in Gaza. And they had promised all of these things to the Gazan people, because prior to that, the people were suffering. They said that the PLO people were, they were embezzling money and, operating fraudulently and a bunch of other things. So they said they were the ones who were going to bring the actual proper way of operating in Gaza. And in 2007, instead of creating a government along with the PLO, they started killing all of the PLO members and leaders, and the other ones who weren't killed fled and went back to the West Bank, right, which is what they call Judea and Samaria area, east of Jerusalem and west of the Jordanian river, the Jordan River. So that's why they call it the West Bank. And so from there, the organization Hamas just took over totally, and they've been on they haven't had elections in Gaza since 2006. They canceled the elections. And so now they're going on the 17th year of the 4-year term, because they were supposed to have every 4 years elections, but they canceled all of those after they, totally wiped out all of the PLO members in Gaza, or what you would call, the PLO members. And so Fatah, it's called Fatah. And so once they came into power, instead of actually establishing everything that they had promised to establish for the people of Gaza, they started launching attacks against Israel. And as a result of that, Israel then blockaded Gaza and said, okay, well, in a case like this, we're not going to allow anybody to come into Israel from Gaza, and we're going to have a close watch on the air, on the waters, and on the lands, because Hamas had made it a stated goal of theirs to destroy Israel and all of its inhabitants. And so any sovereign country is responsible for then protecting its borders in order to protect the people within Israel. So there's been a blockade on Gaza ever since Hamas took power in Gaza, and which is very unfortunate because you don't want to see people living under a blockade and under those conditions. But these were conditions that were created as a result of something. And so unfortunately, we get to a point now where you have Hamas, who have been getting billions of dollars in aid from all over the world. Their main donor is Qatar. So they get monies from Qatar. They do business with Turkey. They get weaponry from Iran, and they're kind of an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, so they continue to operate. So they have aligned themselves with the Iranian as an Iranian proxy now in the region, and so they're dedicated to continuing to destabilize the region. That's been their main goal since they came into power, to maintain billions of dollars they've received in aid and the natural resources and the materials they received in order to build Gaza. They use those then in order to build underground tunnels that will lead into Israel, that will allow them to continue fighting their jihad, which they call the way to deal with Israel. They receive water pipes to create a pretty good water system that will provide proper drinking waters to the people in Gaza. But then they use those to build and launch rockets. The funds that they received, the majority of those funds went into the pockets of the leaders. And so the leaders don't necessarily live in Gaza now. Majority of those leaders live in 5-star hotels over in Qatar. So we're talking about the only one who's still in Gaza. His name is Yahya Sinwar. But the other ones, they reside in Qatar. So they don't even live here. But all of them became billionaires. But the people in Gaza are actually still suffering. And so there was a study that was conducted by the Arab Barometer before the October 7th massacre. The Arab Barometer is the Arab leading polling organization, right? And they're expected to be, the most accurate polling organization. So they polled Gaza in order to understand a few things. They wanted to understand, number one, what was the relationship of the people in Gaza to Hamas, and 73% of the people that they don't support Hamas. The question was, okay, so then why don't they create an uprising? And one, because it's been suppressed because the people of Hamas continue to control Gaza with a strong arm. They have a military of about 20 to 30,000 people, which is called the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades. And they use those brigades in order to continue to strong arm the people of Gaza. Then you have approximately 74% of the people in Gaza who say that they would like to have some type of political, resolve with Israel so they can be able to live their lives. But Hamas is not about that. Hamas is about jihad. And so Hamas is more dedicated to the Muslim Brotherhood ideology and agenda, opposed to increasing the quality of the life of the people in Gaza. And so when the people of Gaza were polled, they also mentioned that they say that Israel is not their issue per se. 66% say that Israel is not their issue. They say that the internal workings of Hamas has been the problem. And what do I mean by that? They say that the mismanagement of the funds that they receive. They say that Hamas has caused Gaza to have such high inflation where 75% of the people can't even manage to get food. They say that Hamas is not really attentive to the needs and the desires of the people. And so in order for you to get something from them, you would need to be in their close circles. So there's nobody to really talk to from Hamas like that. And so they're saying that a lot of what's being said externally doesn't necessarily represent the Palestinian people internally, because Hamas is not the representative of the Palestinian people, although they did vote them in 2006. But they're now, more, they're dissatisfied with Hamas, and they are more in favor of somebody else to come in and to control the region. And even now during the war, a significant amount of them are saying that Hamas brought this on the Palestinian people in Gaza by creating an offensive attack on the people of Israel, knowing that there would be such a response. But they still carry that out anyways. And not only did they carry that out, they've embedded themselves within the civil population in Gaza, to a point where if you wanted to go to fight them, hand to hand, man to man, it's almost nearly impossible, because when you have rockets that are being launched from within homes, and when you have rockets that are being launched from within mosques, and you have rockets that are being launched from within hospitals, and you have, your military facilities, so close to these areas, that becomes a problem, because any small attack could cause some major damage to everybody around. And so instead of, for example, you isolating yourself and say, okay, we're going to fight as soldiers in the Azadin al-Qassam brigades of Hamas. We're going to put on our uniforms and we're going to fight in combat. No, they wear normal uniform, normal clothes like anybody else. So it's hard to distinguish between them and just another, citizen. And so you fight in a war that it's almost impossible to win up front. You know what I mean? But then you can't allow such an organization to be on your borders who says that they intend to continue such attacks on Israel time and time and time again. You can't allow such an organization to be on your border. Now, I'm saying that the Palestinian people, they're suffering just as much under Hamas as anybody else, because Hamas has really hijacked the just cause of Palestinians, because the Palestinian people, they deserve justice. They haven't been treated properly throughout the years, and they deserve, a better solution than what the leadership had been bringing to them. But you take that just cause and you ride on that and say, okay, we're going to make a lot of money from it because we can ask for donations worldwide. We're going to get the sympathy of the people from it because they have sympathy for the just cause of the Palestinian people, but they don't even realize that we, as members of the Muslim Brotherhood, we don't have a resolution to this. And our desire is to have a more general outlook and scope to carry out jihad and to bring everybody under this Islamist leadership worldwide, not just in Israel. This is just one of, the branches, but they have branches of Muslim Brotherhood worldwide. But people don't realize that. So if you don't understand these things, then you would conflate all of the Palestinian people all into one, and you create a salad, and you wouldn't even realize what you created because you don't even know where you went wrong at. And so that's in a nutshell. I mean, we can go on and on and on about Hamas, but that's in a nutshell the organization that Hamas is. And unfortunately, this is what Israel has been fighting. Yeah. And you have so many people in between, innocent people, who are being affected by this war, which it shouldn't be. And so it's just heartbreaking to see all of the destruction, all of the lives being lost on both ends. And it has to be a better solution to this. Yeah. I know it's a better solution, but we're currently in power because it's their desire to continue this on, because they get clout from it and they make a lot of money. And there's a lot of interest groups that are actually continuing to benefit from war. And so the small people at the bottom are the people who are being affected by it, while the other people at the top are actually fattening their pockets,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
they benefiting
So
from it.
I know that was extensive, but
That
I had to
was
give as much as I can about the organization.
nah, that was interesting. That was interesting. Yeah, and I know from other Muslim countries, they feel some type of way about what's going on, with the bombing that's keep happening, within the Palestinian people. Because they, like you said, Hamas is Hamas, but the Palestinian people is still the Palestinian people. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting. And then you said a lot actually, and I want to read back. I want to go back and listen to some things that you said. But yeah, bro. Um, we will come back and do some more updates on the war. On the war, I would like us to come do some updates on the war, get real deep into this stuff. So this would be just like the first, first segment of what we're going to be doing or what's really going on in Israel. So appreciate having you on here, bro. Hey, we be back, man. We be back, y'all. Shalom, shalom.
Absolutely, my